Hey, it's Aaron here. So I wanted to do another 10-minute video or less. This one will be less on the topic of worship. Now, worship, a lot of times, like when you think of church, is the music portion of the service. When you have to stand up, you have to sing, and that might be like a specific number of songs. It might be different each time, but it's this time where you do singing. Now, worship is singing. But there's also other parts of worship too. Worship in the church can also be sacrifice or adoration. It can be giving of your time. It can be giving of your money, your words, your devotion, your influence. All of these things could be worship. But specifically, I do want to focus on the music portion or the singing portion, because that's kind of what we all deal with when it comes to church and being in a service. And I want to talk about why we do what we do as far as singing and standing and doing that for God, and kind of help you process how to practically do that and what that actually looks like in your head and spiritually as you're doing that. So specifically, why worship God and why sing? The first is God deserves it. God deserves it. He's, first off, infinite, so never ending, and he has no beginning, no end. He's God. So he's greater than us. So he's deserving of our worship. He's deserving of our worship because he's our rescuer. He is one that's redeemed us from sin. And then he's the one who makes all things good for us. He makes all things good for the world. The second is, as followers of him, Jesus and God, they ask for us to worship them. Meaning in Romans 12:1 it says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, which is your spiritual service of worship. So why sing? Why stand? Why have a portion of the church service? Because God says this. God says to do that. But specifically with your lips of singing, God talks about that too. In Hebrews 13:5-16, it says this: through him, then, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. So he wants us to use our lips, so literally our lips, our voice, the things that come out of our mouth, to worship him. To worship him. So whenever you were thinking about why we worship, what the point is, or if someone ever asks you, like, why do you sing like songs, or know that you're singing to honor God's wishes and to give him the worship he deserves. Now the applicational part. What does worship really look like for me personally, and maybe for you? So for me personally, worship a lot of times happens in the car. I drive by myself a lot. I'll usually have some music turned up, and the worship music I listen to tends to be, my favorite artists right now are Elevation Worship and Hillsong United. They have songs that talk about God and who he is as a being and as an essence, and it reminds me of why I do worship him. So I sing these songs along, and I think about the process or think about singing them to God, or acknowledging the fact that these things are about God, and I want to say these things out loud to him. So that's kind of like what happens in the car. I turn it up, I sing these songs in the car. It takes a while sometimes to learn them. Sometimes I sound horrible. Sometimes people give me weird looks. But I sing in the car because that's a really great opportunity for me to use some of the time I have in the car to worship God. Another time would be maybe a specific time, so not like just randomly whenever you're driving, but it's a specific time to reflect and get away with my headphones. So to me, sometimes that looks like when I'm biking or I'm running, I'll specifically put my headphones in. Sometimes I'm listening to Beast Mode playlists, but sometimes I'm listening to worship music. And that worship music, if I can get into the zone of having it be something I want to say to God instead of just hearing, I consider that worship. Now, like I said, worship music, you can listen to it and enjoy it, but it doesn't mean it's worship. You worship is when you're actually acknowledging the fact that this is to God. Two other times in church, obviously, there's a worship portion where we stand up or we sit down, and some people raise their hands, some people dance or do all kinds of different things. But the time for worship for me in church is I usually stand and I'm singing these songs and I start thinking about, wow, these words really are God. These words really are how I feel about God, or how I should feel about God. I want to sing these things out. That's me during a church service for worship. The last thing I do is in nature. So a lot of times I'll go out into the woods or to a field, or I realize my favorite place lately is a Great Lake, so Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, and you're surrounded by the woods, but you have like this beach that just looks out into the lakes. It's amazing. But when I'm there, I acknowledge the fact, like, wow, this is beautiful. God, you created this. This is amazing. Now, these aren't songs that I'm saying, but I'm worshiping God and His creation, saying, God, wow, you are an amazing creator. This is so awesome. So those are the ways I worship. For you, I want to challenge you this week or at some point to try to sing in church. Try to just sing in church and picture singing for the sake of bringing God joy, because He deserves it. The next thing would be, I recommend try a moment of worship on your own. Whether that maybe is like taking your headphones out and specifically like picking a song that you know from a worship set or from like a service, or if you need recommendations, let me know. But Elevation Worship, Vertical Church, Bethel, Hillsong United, they have great worship music that helps you acknowledge like what God deserves when it comes to worship. But I want you to do that on your own. Try that like on your own, or if you're driving in your car. And then lastly, try to worship God with your lips in nature, telling Him how in awe you are of Him as the creator and how amazing His creation is. So I hope these things help you to worship God or connect with God and give Him that sacrifice. Again, this is just one portion or part of worship itself, but I encourage you to try and worship God and connect with Him in amazing ways. Can't wait to touch base with you guys with our last video coming up next week. I can't wait to see you then. Bye.